In this short video, I'm going to give you a brief history of tree rings. But first, I want to clarify something, and this really applies to all the records we're talking about. We had a full lesson on how important dating is to our records, right? And you can use dendrochronology to date things. This on its own is interesting. For example, I can use a tree ring record to help me determine an age of an archaeological site, or to date the minimum length of time since a glacier or a moraine has been glacier free, or even just to determine the time since a forest was last cleared or burned. But in terms of climatic and environmental reconstructions, we also want to determine climatic or environmental data in addition to the ages from the tree rings. You might be thinking, well, temperature, that's what we want to know. But we may also be interested in other variables like drought, precipitation, fire history, vegetation, stream flow, and so on. So to sum up, from tree rings, we want the years, yes, but we also want the climatic or environmental variable. So dendrochronology was initially applied to the study of the history of the great houses of Chaco Canyon by this man, A.E. Douglas, in Arizona. The great houses of Chaco Canyon were built by the ancestral Puebloans, an ancient native culture that spanned the Four Corners region of the U.S. So that includes Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado. If you look at a map, you can see why it's called the Four Corners. So though it may not appear it at first, these reconstructions are built not only of stone, but of wood too. In particular, to create the roofs and the windows, there are wood beams that are critical to the construction of these buildings. You can check out this site and the structures they studied, as well as head into Google Street View and find wood samples to look at. You can check that out below or head in a separate window. If you have trouble finding wood by going into Google Street View, check out the little circles in the walls and the transoms over the window along the way. He and others were interested in finding out where might the ancestral Puebloans have taken this wood from, since if you scale out, you can see that the landscape is pretty devoid of trees within a 2-day journey by foot. I know it's 2 days because I just did directions by foot on Google Earth, but you'd have to imagine that's hiking 12 hours a day, doesn't include actually bringing back giant trees. So this is obviously a fascinating finding as well, and the landscape would have been barren then as well. They also became interested in dating the site using tree rings. They struggled to do so because the newest historical wood was older than the oldest living wood, so there was a gap between these two records. So they were able to say it was older than a certain age, but not able to say exact age. Eventually, though, at a different site in the southwestern U.S., they were able to find the sort of missing link. That is a historical piece of wood that matched both the tree ring records from the Chaco Canyon site and the living tree record. So they were able eventually, and we now know that the structure was occupied between 828 AD and 1126 AD. So this is a bit of a history lesson, but also a way for you to see some of the initial questions that were answered using dendrochronology.